Hey, it's Adam again. So let's talk about myths and debunk some of them because there is a lot of misinformation floating around out there about like what you should and shouldn't do whenever giving a public talk. So first myth, I am not a public speaker. This is the thing that people tell themselves, right? And the fact of the matter is that you speak in public all the time. I mean, unless you're a shut-in, like you talk to people on the bus, maybe you're that person that talks to people on the bus, I don't know. You talk to people in class, like you have a friend group, perhaps you've spoken at a meeting. Like this all counts as public speaking. Like the context may be different whenever you have to get in front of a room and people will clap for you and give you their full and undivided attention. But the concepts are the same. Like it's just ratcheted up a level. So just know that like there is no real difference between some of the other things and the things that you're doing in this class. Other than that, the things that you're doing in this class are more formal and structured. Like, but the skills still combine, and so you will get practiced at it and get to get better. Another thing that people always tell me is don't speak with your hands. But remember in our last segment where we learned about how 55% of communication is nonverbal. If you take your hands out of that equation, you've lost the ability to make gestures, which adds, variability and clarity in terms of, getting your message across. And so it looks weird when you don't speak with your hands, when you put them in your pockets or you hold them right by your side. So you should speak with your hands. You probably will be a little bit more animated than normal because you're nervous, but that to me is better than I'm going to focus on not moving my hands at all because that's not fun for us to watch. All right. Other people tell you to look over the audience's heads, right? Just look at the back of the room. And maybe that's a thing that you have to do if you can't stand to look at people. But in general, people like it when you look at them because it gives the sense that like you're not talking at them, that you're talking to them. And so one strategy that I use just to make sure that I cover all my bases is like I will talk to one half of the room, and then I'll sort of pivot and talk to the other half of the room. And I'll try to make eye contact with people, just for a few seconds. If you have a friend in the audience, somebody that you know that like won't be weirded out if you look at them, and it makes you feel comfortable to look at them, like you should tell them ahead of time, like, oh man, if I get nervous, I'm gonna stare at you, okay? And that sounds really weird, but it may help you out if that's a thing. But definitely don't stare over people's heads. Also, don't picture anybody in anybody's underwear because that's creepy. All right. Memorize your presentations. This is a thing that people do, right? They're like, oh, you need to memorize it. You need to practice it verbatim in the mirror until you can do it exactly right. And that's really dumb because you will invariably get up in front of the group. You will forget a word, and then you will get hung up because you forgot the word, and you will no longer have done your presentation exactly perfect. All right. And so a better way is what we call the YAM method. Okay. And so it's to use know yourself, know your audience, know your material. Right. And so we make note cards or we make PowerPoints with bulleted points, like talking points for us. And we do practice them. I'm not saying don't practice, but we don't worry about a word for word verbatim, transcripted repetition of your talk. You just have points that you want to cover, and then it comes out more naturally that way. So when I say know yourself, I mean know the things that are going to be of issue for you. So for me, the part of this talk where I am the most nervous in any kind of lecture whenever I first started teaching was the initial part, because I always wanted people to laugh, and sometimes they don't laugh at my jokes, then I get really self-conscious. And so what I would do is I would always try to plan in an activity up front so that I could come in and just introduce what we were going to do today and then immediately go into the activity, and it gave me a chance to get settled in, okay? And then by the time the activity was done, we were 15 minutes into the lecture, and I'm like, all right, things are going good. So that is a thing to know about yourself. Just know the things that make you nervous or the things that you're good at, and then play to your strengths. The other thing is to know your audience. So, in this class, of course, you're going to be speaking to the same 20 people all semester. But, when you go out and you talk to like business people, if you're talking to farmers, if you're talking to, board of directors, if you're making a pitch there, you need to take some time and think about, where they come from, like what is their demographic makeup, like what things do they know, like in terms of like your talk. So can you be like very jargony, or do you have to be more broad because they don't have, the background in whatever your topic is? And so the more that you spend time thinking about what your audience is and what they need to hear, the more prepared you'll be. And then finally, if you just organize your material in an organized way, and then practice it, again, not verbatim, but just making sure that, you can articulate the points that you want to articulate, you'll probably do just fine. Okay. So don't try to memorize your presentations. Another one is always use a lectern. People are like, stand behind the lectern. That's what it's there for. No, nobody likes that. because you look like you're afraid to come out from behind it. So always, if you got to go back to your computer and advance the slide, that's one thing, but always come back to the center of the room so we can see you and move around. So, and then finally, people say, don't be nervous. Like, why would anybody ever say that to you, right? It's totally okay to be nervous. Nervousness is a good thing. The thing is just to channel that nervous energy, right? Because if the point at which you're not nervous, you become like that professor that's been teaching for 30 years and no longer cares. And he's just like, all right, I'm going to read you my slides. Get ready, because he doesn't, he doesn't care. So it's okay to be a little bit nervous. The thing is just to recognize that is a thing that everybody goes through, and then to channel it into enthusiasm and having like more modulation in your voice and more gestures. And so all these things that make people good presenters, like that we just talked about, are things that stem and are fed by being nervous. And so it's totally okay. All right. So again, the 5 characteristics of an effective presenter were clarity, whether of content or of voice; variability, whether of voice or of, the things that you're, showing us, like in the way of visuals; enthusiasm, pacing and timing; interaction; and participation. And we're going to cover more in depth for each of these as we go through the course, but this is just a very broad kind of thing. And I encourage you, as you do your reflections, to come back to this and say, all right, like I gave my talk. I think that people couldn't see my PowerPoint, so maybe that's a thing that I need to work on in terms of clarity, et cetera, et cetera. So hopefully that is of help to you all. Thank you very much, and we'll see you at the next lesson.